Riya and welcome. Let's learn together and grow. And today it is a moment of extreme pleasure to welcome our very acclaimed doctor, Dr. Samir who is present here with us, and he will be answering some of our questions regarding today's topic, which is early childhood development. I know there must be so many queries regarding this topic. So before jumping to the question directly, doctor, please tell our viewers something about yourself.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Samir Dalwai. I am a pediatrician who specializes in a field of pediatrics called developmental behavioral pediatrics. So basically, I look after the children's developmental issues and developmental behavioral concerns and behavioral issues, and try and help and sort parents and children's worries out over these issues.
Alright, thank you, doctor. And doctor, at what moment would you say was the moment when you decided to become a doctor?
Well, I guess so doing relatively well in school, then everybody, at least the time when I grew up, tells you that you should be a doctor or engineer. And I realized in 11th that I was terrible at trigonometry. So I thought biology would be the better thing to do. But the real interesting moment in my life was after I became a pediatrician and I was practicing as a pediatrician. Much later, of course, after getting into MBBS, when I realized that what I actually liked was spending time related to children's developmental and behavioral issues. And after 5 years of my regular pediatric practice, I set up this organization called New Horizons Child Developmental Center, where over the last 20 years now, we've been looking at developmental behavioral problems of children in Mumbai and also on an online platform. And I believe that is something that I truly think is my calling.
Thank you, doctor. And doctor, how is development different from growth?
Yeah, that's another good question because most people are confused about that. Growth is basically an increase in the size and the number or the physical dimensions of an organism. So increase in the height, increase in the weight, increase in the chest circumference or increase in the head circumference, everything that can be measured either on a weighing scale or by a measuring tape, that's what we call growth. And of course, that's not the overall height and weight as only, it's also the growth of the internal organs obviously and the entire body that pushes this. Whereas development is basically the learning or the acquisition of certain skills that are required for you to interact, adapt and manage in the environment or in the world that you are. So these are the two aspects. Growth is basically largely, you can say, limited to a physical increase or physical increment, whereas development is those skills which allow you to adapt and exist in this world.
And doctor, what? And doctor, what factors affect development in child?
Well, as you must have heard, I'm sure there's always a battle between nature and nurture, but it's actually not a battle. Both of them together combine to give a good development for the child. So when we talk about nature, we mean biology. So it obviously goes down to the genes and begins not just at conception but even before conception, because today periconceptional health of the mother is very important because it's the health of the mother that determines how the embryo is going to take off. So it's the womb which is the environment for the child after conception, and hence it's the genes as well as the maternal health that matters a lot. Plus there are many factors that could go wrong or that need to go right probably during the antenatal period of the entire 9 months of the pregnancy, which largely include the mother's nutrition, the mother's overall health, whether there is any infection that could infect the growing, that could damage or harm the growing baby, and various other aspects of the mother's health. And birth is merely a station which changes the environment from an internal environment to the external environment, that is the outside world. And hence after birth, the nurturing that the child gets, which to begin with itself is a parenting that the child receives, then the nutrition beginning with breast milk and then of course the weaning foods and then the going on to have a normal diet, whether the child enjoys good health, whether the child has a very good interaction with the parents and with the family around him, whether the child gets enough opportunity to learn and to explore and to pick up from the environment, and how everybody around the child combines together to help the child develop. So it's overall a combination of all these factors, primarily the genes, primarily the mother's health, primarily the nutrition of the newborn child, the good health, free from infection state part of the child, and of course the early learning atmosphere or the environment that can be given to the child. That matters.
All right, doctor. And doctor, our viewers would like to know what is early childhood development.
Right, so when we say childhood development, we understand that now, but how early is early? So there are some who believe that the first 8 years are very important for the child. Some who believe that right from conception to the first 2 years of the child's life after birth, that is 9 months of conception and the first 2 months of the child's life, actually these 3 years or the first 1,000 days, these are the important parts of the early childhood development era. Whereas as pediatricians, since we did see the child only after birth, we may consider the first 3 years after birth as the part for early childhood development. What matters though is this is the time when the maximum brain development is taking place in the first few months to years of the child's life. What it means is that the child is born with a huge number of neurons, but the child doesn't know much because these neurons haven't connected with each other or haven't coded for things to do. When the child gets stimulation or the child experiences things in the first few months after birth, immediately after birth in fact, these neurons start connecting to each other and coding to form programs which we call learning. So it's the exposure that drives these connections between these billions of neurons, and this is the fundamental learning that's going to form a scaffolding or a trajectory for the child to keep learning in the later life. And hence the early childhood development, also what we can say is the early development of the brain and the connections inside the brain which are reflected in early childhood development or vice versa. That's why it's very important, because this is the basic network for the further development of the child throughout life. So we can trace back whatever happens to a child's development or a person's development throughout her or his life to what happened in the first few weeks, months and years after birth. So that's why early childhood development is very important right from the time of birth.
And doctor, what are the best early learning opportunities?
The best early learning opportunities are not in the toys or the games that are being marketed. Let me say that upfront. The best learning opportunities are not on a laptop. They are probably on the mother and father's lap, or even the uncle and the aunt's lap, or the elder cousin brother or cousin sister's lap. So what's very important is to drive this message home to all parents that the greatest, earliest learning opportunity is with you. You are the biggest teacher of the child, not a particular toy that you may buy, or those rings that somebody has told you to stack up, or those blocks that somebody has told you to make into a tower. Of course, that is important. And why I'm saying this is because unfortunately parents feel now that giving the child a screen or a mobile phone or a smartphone is probably going to make the biggest impact on the child's learning. Yes, impact, yes, but a negative impact. Because the earliest learning of the child is about being human, about interacting with humans, about learning how humans behave, about learning how humans interact with each other and how they behave with each other, so the child can do the same thing. So it's very important to provide the child the early learning opportunities by interacting with the child, by playing with the child without using too many objects or toys, by interacting with the child, by allowing the child to watch how you interact with each other at home, by getting the child to participate in the day-to-day activities that the child needs to be part of, by involving the child in the household chores that can be done, because these household chores are nothing but part of normal social learning. If this does not get accomplished in the house, it's difficult for the child to pick this up outside or outdoors or in the school later. So that's why early learning opportunities have to be with the family and the child in the child's home, which is why we see such a big problem in foster care or maybe in orphanages where the child does not have this kind of a nurturing home or caregiver or parent environment.
Alright doctor, so as you spoke about parenting in ECD, so could you please tell us what is the role of parenting in ECD?
Well, the biggest advocate for the child or the biggest provider, if I may use a word, or the protector for the child is going to be the parents or the primary caregiver. And all the components of early childhood development can come only if it is provided through this caregiver, which may be a parent or which needs to be a parent rather, but in the very unfortunate circumstances that one of the parent is not around or a demise or something like that, somebody has to step in, making sure that they are the platform for delivering all that is essential for nurturing care of the young child, so that the early childhood development is not hampered. And that is why how this early caregiver or this primary caregiver interacts with the child, handles the child, looks after the child, monitors the child is crucially important. And that's the role of parenting or the role of the primary caregiver in being with the child, interacting with the child almost all the time.
And Doctor, why is development a highly interactive process and life outcomes when are not determined solely by genes?
Because genes will give you the platform or the hardware, but it's the learning and the exposure and what you see and what you do that forms the software. It's like the child can make his or her own software, and it's like the parents can actually help make the child's software by how they interact with the child. So it's this interaction, what the child is seeing around her, around him, not just how the parents behave with the child, but the child seeing how the parents behave with each other, the parents behave with other people around. All of this determines the child's learning about human behavior, and this is going to be for the rest of the life. And if this is replaced by just keeping the child in front of a screen or just giving the child just too many toys, especially electronic toys, what it does, it takes the child's attention away from humans. And I can quote you n number of examples where somebody very happily buys a mobile phone or a tablet, and I've seen 3 to 4 month old children being shown a tablet and they're just looking at the tablet, and even the food, I mean, they just open their mouth and swallow. They are not even looking at the person who's feeding them. What is shocking is parents are happy to do this, because it seems that the only thing to do is just gobble. The child should gobble and should put some food inside his tummy. It's not the physical food that's most important. It's the emotional food, it's the behavioral food, it's the interactive food. That's the real food, which we are completely missing out if we don't do this.
So it's time for the short break now. We'll all see you in next few minutes. Doctor, why are responsive relationships early in life important?
So when we say, when we use the word responsive relationships or responsive caregiving, it's very important to understand that response is the most integral part of interaction. Because when the child does something, the response that the child gets determines the quality of interaction and whether the child will continue further with that interaction or will break that particular engagement and focus on something else. So here today you have a world which is filled with objects, especially this one object which has replaced not just humans but other objects, and that's a smartphone or a screen. If the parent's response to the child's needs, in terms of the child crying or in terms of the child smiling, in terms of the child reaching out or the child laughing or the child tugging at something, even maybe the mother's hair, if the response is not appropriate, immediate and adequate, it's likely to make the child feel that I'm not getting the interaction that I need, so I don't need to continue with this. On the other hand, you have a screen which is all the time moving, flashy pictures, loud noises. So there is no interaction, but it definitely draws the child's attention there. So what I'm trying to say is, on one hand, you have a device which is just all the time programmed to draw the attention of the child towards itself, but offers no interaction. On the other hand, you have to compete as a parent to drive the child away from the screen towards yourself, but you have the power of interaction. So you have to make use of your own ability to interact with the child, to get the child to respond more and more towards you, because this is what is going to draw him further and further into more better sustained human interaction. Once human interaction is established by this responsive caregiving, then the child is more attuned to the human interaction, social behavior, then human communication and the social communication better than otherwise. So response to whatever the child does, by not overstimulating or understimulating. For example, if a child cries, the adequate response would be to come and immediately pick up the child, say a few soothing words, hug the child, comfort the child, feed the child if the child needs. Not doing it is not responsive parenting. So it, like we explained, it's going to cause some detrimental effect. At the same time, overdoing it, fussing too much about it, even after the child is quieted down and still going over the top, is then going to make the child feel that this is normal and expect this all the time, which if it is not done by others, for example the school teacher, is going to be seen as abnormal by the child. So responsive caregiving has to be well coordinated, has to be immediate, and has to be appropriate, neither less nor too much more. But if you have to make a mistake, I would say err on the side of a little more response rather than under response.
Okay, doctor. And doctor, when should a parent start reading to their children?
Alright, so the issue around reading is basically when you read, parents think that it's only the Shakespeare that is being being conveyed to the child, because you may be, what you read, the content is being given a lot of importance to, or the book is being given too much importance to. Worse, this entire process of reading, which is considered a very highly intellectual process, which it is, but not at the age of 6 months or 7 months or 8 months. So what is it that is it is important for a 6 or 7, 8 months? Whether the parent is still interacting with the child, whether the parent is responsive to the child's cues. If the child is bored, the parent stops and does something else that gets the child interacting again. This is more important. So reading at 6 months, 7 months is good, but please understand it's not a substitute for you. And the learning that may come from the reading is not so much from the content of the reading, but in the soothing mother's voice or the soothing father's voice, the response with which you work with the child, how you alter your voice while reading something, because the child is then responding to that as a cue. Because at a 6 months, the child may not understand the words that you are reading out, but he is responding to the warmth that you give, the interaction that you give, the engagement that you give, the responsiveness that you have. When the child is looking away, you continue reading Shakespeare, it's not going to help the child at all. So these are the aspects of reading that you should focus on. And once the child develops more interest, not in the Shakespeare that you are reading, but in this process of interaction which includes reading, then you can gradually keep increasing it more and more and more. I think that's the way we should look at it.
Okay, and is it essential that child interacts with family members and siblings at home?
It is absolutely essential that the child interacts with people at home, because if the child is not able to interact with people at home, which is by now a familiar environment, by now the child is familiar, this is my house, ये मेरा घर है, and ये घर में रहने वाले लोग मेरे लोग हैं, and they all are responsive towards me, they all engage with me, so I should also engage with them. So the child's process of the brain development starts recognizing them as essentials or important stakeholders in her or his life, and the fact that he should engage with them more and more and more. While doing this, the child learns that the way my father interacts with me is a little different from the way my mother reacts with me, is a little different from the way my sibling interacts with me, and also the way my father interacts with my mother is different from the way he interacts with me, and the way my mother interacts with my sibling is a little different from the way she interacts with me. All these differences are very, very important. Otherwise, the child will only pick up one type of a pattern. We don't want them to pick up patterns. We want them to understand diversity, variation, differences, and yet understand how to deal with those differences, which is nothing but coping. And that's where normal human behavioral coping or normal human interaction comes in. And this can be only possible in the comfort and security of what the child has already identified as her or his safe zone. And that's where the child understands the basis of human interaction and human behavior and human communication. After this is only after this can the child then learn to adjust with an uncle or an aunt or a cousin uncle or a mama or a chacha or a bua and things like that. Only after that can the child take the interaction ahead to other people in the community who are basically very different from the family. But you can't jump directly from here to there. What's worse today, children are not even being given enough opportunity to develop these bonds in the house or in the family, but they are directly being sent to a school which is an unknown place, unfamiliar place. Hence, unsafe as regarded by the child, with adults whom the child has never seen, I mean teachers, and other 20-30 children who are equally terrified at being suddenly being thrown in a place like this. That's not helping. So it is a family where the child, it's a microcosm of the whole world, is a family. And if the child has to learn basic child development, it is not in a tuition class, it is not on an app, it is not in all those classes which are mushrooming all over the world, it is not in all those learning apps, or it is not in some school, or in those XYZ classes. It's at home, it's a family.
Yes, doctor, as you spoke about sharing, and as it is said, sharing is caring. So, doctor, how can a parent teach sharing to their child?
So that's again a very important question. How can the parent teach sharing to a child? Well, it's again like we said, older child. We are all sitting together in the family, in the house, having a meal. It's very normal for the mother to pass something to the child, or pass something to the dad, or the dad to pass something to the mother, and so on and so forth. So that's the point that I'm trying to make. It should all come across as a natural part of human behavior, rather than a particular module that you're trying to teach the child. And once it becomes a part of normal behavior within the house, I'm sure the child, with some difficulty maybe initially, but over a period of time will learn that the community is a larger representation of my own house. And that's how the child will gradually migrate his learning from a smaller domain to a larger one, from the family to the community.
Yes, doctor. And doctor, why is socialization important for a child, and how does it affect the overall development for a child?
When we interact with many people in the community, what we learn is ये चाचा ऐसे है, वो मामा वैसा है, ये मौसी ऐसी है, वो बुआ वैसी है. We have different experiences from different people because people are different. But they are not too different from a mother and father whom we are comfortable with. So the learning difference is only a small gap. And then I can make that gap. I can bridge that gap by learning, oh, this is how I behave with this particular uncle, but this is not what I need to do with this other uncle, or this is what I need to do with this particular aunt, but I don't need to do this with the other aunt. For example, if I go to my uncle's house, one of my uncles doesn't like me wearing shoes or footwear inside the house. So I learn that I have to keep my footwear outside when I go to that uncle's house. But if I go to another uncle's house, it's okay, you can wear your footwear and come inside. In his house, I will wear my footwear and go inside. So I learn to differentiate how I behave differently in different situations with different people. And this is extremely important for the child to learn in the safety and security of the family, of the immediate relatives, and of the immediate neighborhood. Which is why neighborhood is the most important school for a child, because that's where he learns the vagaries of human behavior. Every human has a different behavior. Often the same human being has different behavior at different times. This you cannot learn in a classroom or a child development center or a school. You can only learn in the neighborhood. And that's why this kind of social exposure is very important. Unfortunately, today you have socialization classes or socialization apps. That's disastrous. You can never relive or learn the real experience that you need to do as a human in any situation which is artificial. It can only be done in the community.
Well, doctor, that was really a great response, and it means really a lot to us to be with you, and thanks a lot for taking out your precious time.
Thank you very much.
So we will meet you in the next session with another exciting topic. Till then, to all the lovely viewers, stay tuned, stay happy and stay healthy.